So today we're going to cover how to install the Silly Rabbit Motorsport ethanol sensor. My car already has a Fuel It Bluetooth one, so we're going to be swapping it out. This is everything that comes in the SRM kit. So you got your wire loom, line, AN adapter, the sensor itself, another line, and everything wiring you'll need. For tools, realistically, you just need a 5/8 wrench and 11/16 for the AN fittings and some zip ties for the wire. You're going to disconnect your line here, and if you follow it up past the sensor, it connects here. There's a clip that holds it in there. This one's really easy. You just pop the bottom part down and then pull up, and it'll let you pull your line out. And then same thing down here. This one you can just lift up. It's like a ratcheting one. And then your line's free. So when you do this, there will be fuel in the line. You can pull the fuse located over there for the fuel pump, start your car, let it run out of gas, but there still will be some residual fuel in the line. I'm just going to send it and let whatever leaks out drain into my rags here. So on the connector closest to the firewall, you'll see a red button. You're going to push the connector down into the connector. Push that red button and then lift up. Connector down, push in the button, lift up. And you're gonna have some fuel spray. I have rags under the car, catch anything that's gonna drip, anything else is just gonna evaporate. Alright, for this connector, don't mind the chickens, I live in Hawaii and they're everywhere. There's a button here and there's one on the opposite side. So it's gonna be the same thing as the one up there. You're gonna push the connector in together, squeeze those tabs and then push this in, squeeze that, wiggle this out, and it's free. Now if you don't already have a sensor installed, this will just be one piece of line that you can just remove, throw away, keep it for later, whatever you want to do, because the kit comes with everything you need to replace it. Alright, so next we're going to take our connector. This one goes up on this part, come apart in two parts. So this bottom portion is going to go on this, goes on top and screws into that, like so. This is probably gonna be one of the trickiest parts, is getting a wrench to hold the bottom part while you're tightening the top part. All right, so what I did, I configured the bottom part so it's the flat sides are kind of like this, so I can get my wrench in there, and I can just get my 5/8 on top and snug this up. Just snug, right? Don't crank it down. Should be good. All right, so next we're gonna install this part of the fuel line. It will fit back in the clamp here. It just takes a little coercion and it'll pop right back in there, and then you're gonna screw it down on top of there. So there's a couple different ways you can set your sensor. I opted to do mine this way. Got my wire tucked back up and then routed behind here. I'm gonna send it to there. I'll cover that later. And then next we're gonna hook up this hose. All right, got my nut up there. It clicks in there. You'll hear an audible click when it's seated and you'll know it's good. I cannot get mine to close back into the factory clamp, but it's on there, good enough. Next step, tighten down your connections. So 5/8 on the lower part and 11/16 at the top, and then just snug it up. So once you get everything buttoned up, you can either start the car, check for leaks, which realistically you don't need to start it. You can just ignition on, the fuel pump will arm and you'll be able to see fuel spraying. You can start it, or you can be a madman like me, finish running the wires, and then we'll test everything at the end. So what I'm doing here is I'm routing it underneath the coil pack wires. That way I can get it tucked up in here, and when I put my zip ties on, it'll be out of sight. So I got my wire all routed underneath, nice and neat. Nothing zip tied yet. And it runs out here. I took my end of my intake off for demonstration purposes, but if you notice, your brake master cylinder has two wires. So what we can do is go straight to that one, and we can just zip tie to it and keep it nice and neat and tucked out of the way. And then there's a grommet in the firewall that you can see right there that leads inside. So you can just poke the wire through, or use a small razor blade, just cut a very, very small hole to fit the wires through. You only have 3 wires to fit through. Not very big of a hole needed at all. My car has this piece of rubber right here. If you move this out of the way, there's that grommet I was talking about. So I'm going to use my razor. I'm just going to cut a very, very small slit to run the wires through. Alright, so what I ended up doing was just taking this piece off It literally just sits on those studs there. And yep, I was stuck on the shifter. So those are freed up. All right, so yeah, as you can see, I pulled it through and it got really, really taut. So we're gonna pull some back through because we do not want it that taut. We want it a little bit of play and then enough that we can tie it up with this other wire and make it look nice and clean. All right, so I zip tied my wires. Use 3 zip ties here. It's routed under. And I use 2 zip ties down here, one under the brake booster, master cylinder area, and one right here. And then the wire goes through the firewall. All right, so for this portion, I'll just use a little plastic pry tool. If you work up one side of this, there's just your little mud clips. You can pop this whole piece off. And here you can see your fuse panel inside, as well as your OBD2 port, which is what you're gonna need to pull a pin out in order for the DS1 and the dash to read your ethanol content in the power gauge. All right, so inside the car for my wires, what I did was bring them up through here. So all I did was feed the wires in between this. They come out just underneath the fuse panel, and I just pulled it through. When I put the cover back on, I'll make sure it's kept pushed up and out of the way, so there's no way it's gonna come down, get stuck behind your brake pedal, or get caught up in your feet or anything like that. Our red wire is power, our black wire is ground, and the white wire is sensor. So we're gonna hook up the added fuse, and then we'll put the ground lug on. It literally attaches to an 8mm bolt right there. And then the white sensor wire is what we're gonna pin into the OBD2 port. All right, so for the red wire, we don't need very much. I'm just literally holding it out the door a little bit. I'm gonna cut it right where my fingers are. I'm just gonna put this added fuse on, crimp it in place, obligatory. That's not going anywhere, pull. As far as where the added fuse goes, all right, so there's a 5 amp fuse down here. There's a 20 amp fuse right there. And there's one empty bar that runs up and down right underneath this 30 amp. That's where your added fuse is gonna go. Now, as far as the added fuse, so it comes with a 10 amp and a 20 amp fuse. For these added fuses, whatever the circuit you're connecting to previously, that fuse will go here, and then your new circuit will have whatever fuse. So in this case, we're gonna put the 10 in the bottom and the 20 in the top. All right, so I got my fuses in. We're gonna go ahead and install it in the spot that I said. I believe it's F48, so it's an unused and it's ignition switch. So that means there's no power to it unless the ignition's turned on. There it is installed. If you're right-handed, it's gonna be way easier. On behalf of left-handed people everywhere, I don't like you right-handed people. Just kidding. All right, next we're gonna pull this 8mm bolt right here, located in the bottom left corner of your dash. All right, it's loose. Just go ahead, pull it down. There's metal in there, so it makes good contact to ground. The same thing with the black wire. You don't need a lot of it because it's literally only going right there. All right, so for this one, you have the eyelet and you have a piece of heat shrink, and then the connector for the white wire and another piece of heat shrink. So the heat shrink will go on first before you put the eyelet on. Very important step. And something I like to do for these eyelets is I'll bend the wire over in half, and then when I put it on there, more surface area gives you a better crimp. All right. So we got it pushed in there. You can see it's doubled over, and then we're gonna go ahead and crimp it. All right, got it in my crimpers, and we're just gonna squeeze. So that's what I did. Put the bolt in with my left hand, with my right hand, just put it over the eyelet, and then just line it up with the hole. Good to go. The last thing we're gonna do is hook up the white wire into the OBD2 port. So as you can see, it's numbered 1 through 8 for the top row, 9 through 16 in the bottom row. We're gonna be pulling pin 15. To get your connector off, as you can see when I wiggle it, there's that little black clip right there. There's 3 of those total, so there's 2 on the back side or side closest to the firewall, and there's 1 on this side. All you have to do is get a pick or small screwdriver and just lightly pry it forward or towards the back of the car, and then all 3 of them, and the port will just slide out. Are my clips pushed in, my connector's up here. If looking at you, if I can get it to focus really quick, you can see 1 through 8 on the top row, 9 through 16. We need pin 15. It's gonna be the gray red one. All right, so what you're gonna do is, you can see where I got it started. The purple piece is just a pin keeper. So there's a little bit thinner side, and then there's the thicker side. You're gonna push from the thinner side, and when you pull it out, you will see all of your pins. They're all held in place with a little locking tab, as you can see. So all you have to do is just pop that little black piece down and the pin will slide right out. Alright, so as you can see, the little plastic thing is just a keeper, the black tab right there. So pull that down, this pin slides out, and all you're going to do is tape or zip tie it up in the loom so it's out of the way. I wouldn't recommend cutting it, just in case you ever uninstall your system. You can plug this back in. Pull it out the door a little bit, we're going to cut it there and strip it back. Alright, so I haven't crimped it yet. All I did was folded the arms over. Just one goes down, one goes over the other one. That holds the wire nice and tight. And then we can kind of crimp this down here, and it holds our wire in there. We have our connector on. These arms in the back are folded down over the shielding, and then the middle portion crimped down as well. Pay attention to the orientation. That is our locking part for the black plastic tab, and that's our tab it locks into. Feel a slight click when it goes in. Alright, we got our pin installed, locked in place. Should be no issue sliding the purple pin lock back in place, so go ahead and slide that in. It only goes one way. And remember that this pin is pin 16, so your 16 will be in the bottom right corner. And then we just go ahead and slide the OBD2 back in there. Remember the two tabs here are going to go forward facing the firewall, and the single tab goes towards the back of the car. Should just drop right in place and clip in. Clips back in place, locked in. You can see our white wire in there. Everything good. So we can reinstall the panel and then turn the car on. Make sure everything works right. Okay, so we got everything buttoned back up. Connectors in. Our DS1's plugged in. We're reading 12% in the power meter. Don't mind the torque meter. So it looks like we're reading ethanol content. Let's start her up and check for leaks. So it drips or sprays. I don't smell any fuel. Secure, not going anywhere. Wires pretty hidden. Install complete.